Hello, my name is Jeffrey Han and welcome to video 2, part 2 of VEX Robotics programming tutorial. Today, we will be covering the operators and flow control you'll need to know in C. So first we need to know what flow control does. Flow control, as you might expect, controls the flow of the code. It decides which part of the code executes at what time, how many times, so on and so forth. You are likely to already be familiar with these statements: if, else, else if, and while. Let's get started. If statements execute the code in brackets if this condition in the parentheses is true. Say that you have already initialized a variable called apple. When this line of code is executed, if the variable apple is greater than 50, it will be set to 50. However, if it's less than 50, then it will just stay the same. All statements must be placed after an if statement. If the if statement's condition is not met, then the else statement will execute the code in its own brackets. So now, if the variable apple is greater than 50, it will be set to 50. However, if it's not greater than 50, it will be set to 30. This means that if apple is 10, it will be set to 30. If it's 40, it will be set to 30. However, if it's 60, then it will be set to 50. Keep in mind that since it only checks if apple is greater than 50, this means that if apple is 50, it will be set to 30 since it's not greater than 50. Finally, else if statements carry out the code if the above if statement's condition is not met and its own condition in parentheses is met. So in this case, if apple is greater than 50, it will be set to 50. But if it's not greater than 50, but it's also greater than 30, so like 40, then it will be set to 30. However, if it's not greater than 30, like 20, it won't be touched. Keep in mind that if it's 60, then it will be set to 50. The while loop repeats the code in the brackets until its condition in parentheses is false. So in this example, the code will add 1 to the variable apple while it is less than twice the value of the variable banana. The variable apple will increment by 1 over and over again until it reaches 200, since 100 times 2 is 200. The code apple equals 1 increments it by 1. Operators are what we use to change the value of variables. You already know most of them, so don't feel pressured by the names of the operators. You will most likely recognize them later. Today, we will be covering arithmetic, relational, logical, and assignment operators. These operators take two values and return something depending on what those values are. These are the arithmetic operators. You are already probably familiar with almost all of these. The plus operator returns the sum of the values, the minus operator subtracts them, the multiplication operator multiplies, and the dividing operator divides them. And you'll use these often. The only one you might be confused about is modulus, or mod for short. We'll cover that now. The modulus operator, a percent sign, returns the remainder from the two numbers when divided. In this example, int apple modulus 13 will return 2, since 2 is the remainder. You might not use this a lot in robotics, but it is very important to computer science in general, and it has a lot of diverse uses. The one that you'll use most is checking whether or not a number is divisible by another. For example, modding by 2, you could tell if the number is even or odd, since if it's divisible by 2, then it's even, if it's not, then it's odd. Otherwise, you can use it to find the last digit of a number by modding it by 10, since that will return the last digit of a number. So saying that 117 mod 10 would return 7, since 7 is the remainder and is the last digit of the number. The modulus operator can take some getting used to, but it is very versatile and I recommend you learn how to use it. Relational operators return true or false depending on whether the statement is true. Feel free to stop the video and look at what each of these does, but most of them are very intuitive. The greater than operator returns true if it's greater than the second, like, or if it's equal, then it'll return equal. It'll return true if it's equal, false if it's not, so on and so forth. Keep in mind that in the case that the if statement is not met, they will return false. So if it's not greater than if the second value is not greater than the first for the greater than operator, then it will return false. In addition, trying to compare things that are not comparable, like two strings or a string and an integer, will create an error and the code will stop. Here is an example of using relational operators alongside flow control. At the end of the code, the variable maximum will contain the biggest value in the array. Logical operators return true or false if the condition is met. Much like relational operators, you will use these in tandem with flow control. For the and or statements, you'll need booleans, true or false, on both sides. And returns true if both conditions are true, and or returns true if at least one is. The exclamation mark only needs one boolean after it and returns true if the condition is false, and returns false if the condition is true. We call it the not operator. These operators can be used alongside relational operators and themselves. As you can see in the example, we can use not boolean 1 or not boolean 2. This will return, the if statement will run if either of them are false. You'll use these to test whether all conditions are met, or at least one condition is met, or one condition failed, so on and so forth. The assignment operator is one that you already know. It simply sets the variable to a value. Make sure not to confuse it with the equals operator, which has two equal signs. Sometimes beginners will mix up these two, and it creates a lot of bugs that are hard to fix later. Coding, a lot like math, follows a order of operations. For example, it will carry things out in parentheses before multiplication or division, but it will also carry out multiplication or division before addition or subtraction. This much is already taught in math classes, but things like casting, modulus, or the not operator, you might be confused as to which one comes first. There are a lot of things to list, so we'll just instead link you to a website that states them all. You can Google C order of operations and click on the link to find a website that shows them all in order. Sometimes it goes from left to right, sometimes it goes from right to left. You'll have to find that out. Again, there's a lot of content to cover in a short video. It's very pressuring to learn programming since everything seems so foreign, but you'll get used to it eventually. Thank you for watching and have a good day. Thank you.